Are you ready for a new world order?
I think, Becky, the main problem is if you think of the technology is 21st century, 22nd century technology. What is happening in AI, what is happening everywhere really that will really transform and is transforming our lives and also transforming international relations. But I think the frame of thinking is still 19th century. I think this is one of the problems that we have in the international system. If you look, it's still about nationalism, it's still about state sovereignty, it's still about use of force or non-use of force. And I think this is one of the major issues as we try to bridge really what is mentally, governing international relations with the 19th century mode of thinking, but at the same time with technology fast ahead of us in the curve. That I think will be a major problem.
That's a very interesting perspective. Fred Kemp, your assessment.
So my mentor on issues of world order is Henry Kissinger, so I'll try to channel him, and forgive me, Dr. Kissinger. But his answer would be, what do you mean no new world order? We have not had a world order yet. What we've had a Western order that was imposed on the world. And so the first world order in modern times, or somewhat modern times, was 4 centuries ago with the Treaty of Westphalia, ending a century of conflict, the 30 Years' War. And it wasn't a great moral thrust, it was just recognizing the world as it was. If you look at what we're trying to create right now, where I would say at an inflection point in history, as important as the end of World War I, where we got the effort at world order tragically wrong. We ended up with millions of dead, the Holocaust in World War II. After World War II, we got it more right than wrong with the creation of the International Liberal Order and the United Nations and the Bretton Woods system and the European Coal and Steel Community, NATO, etc. And then the Soviet Union fell, and then the Cold War, we thought it was the end of history, and we thought that everyone could fit into this system that had been created, and it worked for a while, but not everybody came into it. But China grew. China certainly took full advantage of being part of the global system. Russia did not. Russia became more of an outlier. And I think where we are now, and this gets to your question, Becky, of a new world order, is it can go in 2 directions with the war in Ukraine now being a
Correct. I wrote a piece in late October saying we're already in World War III. We are already in conflict that extends so far beyond Ukraine, actually, even within the context of Western Europe. But we've clearly been pretty much at war in space, below the surface of the oceans, submarine warfare between superpowers. I would even say that this has been happening for at least 4 years, and it's spilled over into public view on the ground. But we don't frame it that way. Also, this idea that it's one kind of political organization system versus another, but really it looks to me like old-fashioned superpower conflicts, where I'm very optimistic, and I agree with you about how to frame the future. What I see as someone involved in technology, someone involved with entrepreneurs and advising governments, I see a future where we genuinely have ubiquity and not scarcity. I see a future where the internet is available for free for everyone in the most remote locations on the planet, for example. And that means the location of power is going to shift. And I see, as a person in financial markets, decentralization of power structures everywhere. In finance, in political power. And in fact, this conflict that we're in right now may be the beginning of that shift. I certainly see many people from the industrialized world looking very actively to move to places that they used to consider emerging markets, to build businesses there, to expand there. So I also think, to finish, this idea that autocracies have an advantage over democracies, I will fight that tooth and nail. I don't think it is correct. And I think our view that just because, for example, China had a more autocratic approach made them more successful is unproven by time. And we are going to find the places that allow the entrepreneurial spirit to thrive the most and give the greatest political latitude are the ones that are going to grow the best.
Thank you, Pippa. George, your assessment, briefly.
I think human beings live their lives in a storm, and nations live their lives in a storm. And we are gifted with nostalgia. We remember times that never were and long for them. So we are now in a normal condition of humans. We love those we love, we hate those we hate, we fight, we make up. Human beings are this thing. But it is the most interesting thing that we remember things that we never ever were. We remember a time where this tension of love and hate didn't exist. We remember
Is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we're on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
George, what do you believe the biggest shift will be?
Well, there's always a major shift in great powers. The world in 1945 was defined in a certain way. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Maastricht was written. The Japanese economic miracle turned out to be a miracle, and so on. So in 1991, we had a change. We are now having another change. The first, we are discovering that Russia is not a great power. Economically, it lags behind South Korea. Militarily, it has shown itself not to be significant. It is a nuclear power. We've also seen that in China, although it has had a magnificent run for 40 years, has now entered a period of economic dysfunction. Its economy, its financial system and such has to be restructured. And these restructurings aren't easy, and they are never come without political problems. So it's a great power, but how it plays out the game is another question. But one thing we've discovered, I think, in this crisis, the enormous power of the United States, which has been forgotten. But the way the Americans were able to use the dollar as a weapon to put the Russians on defensive, the manner in which the United States was able to rally NATO to this common cause. I mean, when we look at the way we thought of the world a while ago, it's different now.
No.
Agree upon. Just one last thing, because it's so essential to this region, is the extraordinary hit to the supply chain of food. And I think we cannot leave this event without speaking about the need to prepare now to prevent a catastrophe. Because the loss of the fertilizers from both Russia and Belarus, the enormous increase in the oil price, which directly hits farmers around the world, already has caused a jump in the wheat price, which is the single most important foodstuff for this region. And last time we saw this, that was a major contributing factor to the Arab Spring. So now is the time to think through, how will we solve this? And that will be part of the answer of what will the new order work like.
George, I'd love to get your thoughts on what's going on away from Mother Earth, as it were. And I know that we're very much looking forward to the book that you're writing about space warfare. But I do want to just pick up on one thing, because I think it's important that you said just earlier on, you talked to or alluded to, pointed out that there has been this coming together of the West over the invasion of Ukraine. And we are talking there, by the way, about 27 countries of the, 192 odd countries that there are in the world. And as much as we saw the sort of, agreement to condemn what was going on by 140 countries at the UN, this is a non-binding agreement. We've got 27 countries ultimately who have unified. That's their position. It is not necessarily the position of many other countries in the world. But as we see those Western governments looking to navigate what is this new dynamic in what is a bunch of new global sort of dynamics to shape, I guess, a better future, that must be the intention. So what do we make of the end of the speech by President Biden in Warsaw the other day, when, and this has been walked back, of course, by the White House, but I think it's important to just pursue this. The fact that the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, he said, should not stay in office or cannot stay in office. Now, I point out once again that the White House has walked this back. They've said he isn't calling for regime change. But as we consider how governments navigate this future, what's your assessment and the potential impact of that?
I'd like us to think of the 20th century. It was a constantly dangerous century. Whenever some peace broke out, danger lurked. We're in the same position. What we have learned during this is that we're in a dangerous world, that events that we don't anticipate may define who we are, that it's very difficult to handle and very dangerous, that the president spoke of getting rid of